Okay, so now we're back from the restaurant, and I really feel that I was able to get a taste of this project up close and personal. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to go over our design overview, and this is a combination of work that the graphic designer, i.e. my wife, did for us, and we're going to see how this is going to evolve into a real website. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So when you first starting to design a website, the worst thing that you could possibly do is start coding right away. You don't want to do that. You don't want to design a website coding it at the same time. What you do want to do is you want to have some mock-ups, some layout mock-ups that you present to the client that take little to no time to design and to put together and present to the client. And once they approve and you know exactly what you're coding and what you're trying to strive for, then you turn to the code editor and you start coding the website. So what we're going to do is going to design the mockups first. So the tool we're going to use is called balsamiq.com. It's a Balsamiq mockup tool, and it lets us put together mockups for websites, for other different UIs very, very quickly. And I'll show you the cool part about it in a minute. So let's go ahead and switch to Balsamiq mockup. I'll provide you the link to them in the resources. So here's our Balsamiq mockup, and we finished the website layout already with the help of the graphic designer, i.e. my wife. And before we move on to actually design, let me just say a couple of words about this tool. This tool is not free, but it's really not that expensive. However, what's really cool about this tool, besides for the fact that it has components for different platforms that you're able to kind of natively lay them out, you also have integration of components from Bootstrap, which is exactly what we're going to use, so it's really convenient. But I think one of the coolest features of this tool for us as coders is that all these mockups are based upon a file that is really nothing more than HTML looking like text file. It means that you could check things into a code repository, and when things get updated, it's just the text that gets updated. So unlike images and things that really are impossible to deal with inside repositories, and there's no way to tell what the difference is because it's not text, it's binary. This is all text based, and therefore you could take and create a difference between what was checked into the repository yesterday versus today versus is going to be tomorrow. And it's a huge advantage when you're working especially within a team and in a professional environment. Okay, so let's take a look at our website here, the mockup of the website. So the mockup it's going to have a logo with some text underneath, and this is going to be basically our menu, and I'm not sure 100% yet if that's what the menu items will be. Definitely there will be a menu item, right? The menu for the food menu that we're going to have. And there's the phone number with a little thing we deliver. Now this big area is what's planned for this is some kind of a picture of the inside of the restaurant. It's going to be what's called a Jumbotron in Bootstrap. So when the user first gets in here, he sees a very nice picture of the restaurant and it's inviting and they want to kind of proceed. What's going to be underneath is 3 giant buttons: menu, specials, and a map. And it's self-explanatory what it stands for. And these are kind of the key things that we want the user of this website to see right away, which is, they want to see the menu, perhaps specials, and certainly where this is located. At the bottom, we're going to have hours, some bunch of quotes or a couple of quotes about the restaurant, and we're going to have the actual address of the restaurant as well. Now remember, this is going to be a responsive website, so we need to design what the site will look like when the browser page gets a little more narrow. So the first one is going to be a tablet. So what happens when you're in a tablet? Well, not much happens when you're in a tablet in this particular design, because we're just going to squeeze different items as opposed to before that's going to kind of spread out. And now we're just going to squeeze them a little bit more and still have the Jumbotron and still have the specials. They might be a little bit squeezed in terms of size, and everything else basically stays the same. Now, however, when we jump to going to a mobile page, that becomes very different. Now we're not going to have these buttons anymore. We're going to have a kind of a menu where the user can click and the menu will slide down, which is a very common feature. You also notice that we moved the telephone number in the middle of the page now, because supposedly on a mobile web page, right, you would want to have the phone number just a click away or tap away, and we're going to have this phone number tappable such that they can make a phone call straight from the page, or it will at least trigger their phone to try to call the restaurant. And we'll still have the Jumbotron, but it's going to be a much smaller one because we don't want to overwhelm the phone and the cell network. We don't want it to be too slow. And you could see here that now this thing is a little bit rearranged. We have the menu and the specials, but the map is now on the bottom of those two things. So we're going to have to figure out how to have the map automatically slide underneath of that. And we're still going to have some testimonials about the restaurant, the hours, and the address. Now, that's really not all we need to design. We also need to design another page, and we know up front we're going to have this menu categories page. Well, the menu categories page, and this is showing us the full one, is going to basically have a bunch of different things, and here it looks like we're going to have 6 menu categories across, and it's basically going to continue until we run out of these menu categories. So that's basically what we're going to have. We're not going to have a Jumbotron here because at this point they're already a little bit deeper into the website. And the other one is a menu list. So we're going to have, supposedly they will click on one of the menu categories and they will see every item inside that menu category. And this is basically what we have. So we're going to have a couple of items across with their name, with their description, and we're also going to have a ID for every single item. And that ID, if you look, if you remember, let me go back to the restaurant, David Chu's China Bistro. And that ID really comes from right here. Every menu item has this ID that is already on their menu, so we don't want to switch that back and forth. We want to keep that set so the menu will correspond to something that's on the website. Okay, so that's our layout. Next, let's take a look at some design that has already some colors and some more concrete layout. So here's what our designer came up with, and this is just basic idea, and this is what you're usually going to get back from a designer. You're going to get some kind of a color scheme, some photography, and the photography is not from this particular restaurant. It's just some stock photography that you can certainly use in order to kind of enhance the site to see what it looks like. And here's our menu again. This is not the menu from this particular restaurant, or that not the picture from a particular restaurant, but actually the map is. So this is what we're going for. And Designer will typically provide for you the hexadecimal color values for different components within your website, and it will also tell you which fonts that they used inside this design. Now, depending on your budget, and if you're trying to do things for free, or certainly if you're trying to find free resources, I will recommend up front that you try to stick with Google Fonts. There's a website, google.com/fonts, and which we'll be using for our website ourselves. So if you can ask your designer to stick to the fonts that are available on that website, it will make your job down the line a little bit easier. Now, don't worry about making minor mistakes, at least with the color scheme and other things like that. For example, we messed up on this site by not providing the designer the photography up front because we just couldn't. We didn't really arrange it that way. We only did the photography after the design was produced, which was not really under our control simply because that's the way the schedules worked out. But when we started comparing the photos that we were able to get from the food photography, we realized that the color scheme, especially for this color right here, the reddish color, is really the wrong one. So we had two choices. We could colorize every single picture that we took with this red, and you're able to do something like this in Photoshop, or just adjust our color, this particular color, slightly so that it will fit the color scheme that the restaurant actually presents in real life. And in this case, our color scheme kind of went close together with the color of the napkins in the restaurant. Now, what tool do you use to design this? Well, professional designers usually use Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop, to design this, but you don't really have to use something so fancy. You can use something as simple as PowerPoint or any drawing tool, because the idea here is really not to come up with a complete 100% design. The idea here is really to come up with enough detail so when you code, you will know what you're trying to achieve. And this is what basically this is about. So we have our mockups, we have our design with the colors and the fonts. It's time to start coding the website. Let's do it.